Shalom. Today we're going to talk about the lost 10 tribes. The lost 10 tribes were part of the Israelite nation and they disappeared. They went walkabout. They went away. They were lost. They forgot who they were, where they came from, and the rest of the world also forgot about them. But they're mentioned often in the Bible, especially in the prophets. And they are destined, according to the Bible, to return. And they are part of the Israelite nation. They are destined to reunite with Judah, with the Jewish people. Meanwhile, they are doing something that they have to do. They have a task to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about where they went, how they got to where they are. And another talk, we'll also talk about why it had to be that way. So first of all, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob were the forefathers of the Israelite people. Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. Jacob was renamed Israel. The name of Jacob was changed to Israel. Israel had 12 sons, and one of his sons, Joseph, had 2 sons, and these 2 sons were considered separate tribes in their own right, so that altogether you had 13 tribes. The Bible, for reasons of its own, tries to keep the number down to 12 by juggling the names around, more or less. At all events, these 12 tribes of Israel, as they are conventionally referred to, 12 tribes of Israel, they divided into 2 separate entities. One of these entities was conquered by the Assyrians and went away. In the 2nd book of Kings, and the prophets referred to it. Book of Isaiah. The other books of the Bible all refer to it. Also referred to the 10 tribes returning and being reunited. So what happened? So another point that we come across in biblical studies, in studying the Bible, is the figure of Joseph. Joseph gave rise to 2 of the tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, but he is very important. So it's also worth noting the presence of Joseph in this whole configuration. So as we said, Jacob had 12 sons. One of his sons was Joseph. Joseph aroused the jealousy of his brothers, and so they sold him into Egypt. In Egypt he became the ruler of the country, and he predicted a famine. He reorganized the country of Egypt. He re-established the kingdom. He saved it from famine, and he also saved the nations all around it from famine. These nations include the area of Canaan, where the brothers of Joseph were, so they too came down to Egypt. In Egypt they were reconciled. All the tribes, all the brothers came down to Egypt with their father, and they were resettled in Goshen, on the border of Egypt and the land of Canaan. After a while, the Egyptians began to oppress the Israelites, who had increased and multiplied. So they cried out to the Lord Almighty, and Moses was sent, and Moses took them up out of the land of Egypt and brought them through the wilderness. In the wilderness they received the Torah. From the wilderness they were required to enter the land of Canaan, to conquer it, which they did, and divided amongst the tribes. So the land of Canaan was divided amongst 12 tribes. The period of the judges. After the judges came the kings. The first king was Saul, from the tribe of Benjamin. After Saul came David, from the tribe of Judah. After David came his son Solomon, who built the temple in Jerusalem. And after Solomon came his son Rehoboam, in whose reign 10 of the 12 tribes seceded, separated, set up their own kingdom. They were headed by King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, from the tribe of Ephraim. And he set up 2 golden calves, one in Bethel, north of Jerusalem, and another one in Dan, further to the north. Also stopped keeping the rite of circumcision and instituted changes in their religious practices. God was angry with them, as explained at length in 2 Kings 17. They worshipped idols to all extents and purposes. They were virtually pagans where they were. They ceased being Israelites from a religious point of view, or almost ceased being Israelites. The Assyrians came down, took them into captivity. Now, the Assyrian captivity was not so simple. It involved not only taking the mass of the people from the land of Canaan and to different portions of the Assyrian Empire, it also involved a maritime expedition, a maritime immigration, transportation, which numerically may not have been important, but conceptually and also in light of what happened afterwards has importance. We also had to the south of Judah, we had the kingdom, or the kingdoms, the principalities, one could say, of the Philistines. The Philistines were basically a Canaanite people who related to the Canaanites, but they had received Greek culture, Minoan culture from Cyprus, and also from Minoan culture from Crete, and from Cyprus. In other words, they had been influenced from the ancient Greek world. And some of their cultural appurtenances, peculiarities reflect that. And the Assyrians were in trouble. The Assyrians were trying to establish a world empire, but they were always being attacked from the north. They had trouble keeping the countries that they'd conquered, keeping them together. They had brought people from all over the place and switched them around, swapped them around here and there. And they also had a need for raw materials to conquer markets, to receive minerals that they needed for the production of instruments, implements, and weaponry. And it was a problem. That was the Bronze Age. And bronze in many ways is actually superior to iron, at least in its initial stages. Later, when the production of iron became more sophisticated and they started producing steel, it was a different story, but at the beginning bronze was superior to iron, but it was difficult to produce. It also required the presence of copper and tin. Tin was available in Cornwall, mostly in Cornwall, also in other areas, but mostly in Cornwall. And copper, most of the copper apparently was produced in Wales. A good portion of the copper was produced in Wales, not far from Cornwall. Both these areas were taken over by Assyria, or proxies, Philistines and Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were Canaanites stationed in the cities of Tyre and Zidon and other cities along the coast of Syria and Canaan, of Israel. And they had a maritime empire of their own. They were destined to create these cities, the Emporium of Carthage, that was rivals with Rome at the beginning and was very powerful. And it too had had colonies throughout the Mediterranean, in Italy, parts of Italy, possibly in parts of Greece, along the North African coast, in Spain, and in Germany, and in one form or other also in the British Isles. And they were agents of Assyria. They worked on behalf of Assyria, and these estates, agricultural estates, were established in Spain. Also mines, silver. There's a great deal of silver in southwest Spain. Also there was copper and tin, some tin in the northwest of Spain. And all these areas the Assyrians exploited through their Phoenician proxies, through their agents, and also through the Philistines, who used slave labour from the captured Israelites. The great oil mine in Wales was operated by child labour who had been taken from the Israelites. Prophet Amos speaks of this in the Hebrew original, according to the Hebrew tongue. That is what happened. And this was the beginning of the exiles of the Israelites. The beginning of these enterprises, of these projects, began about the same time as the Israelites were conquered by the Assyrians and their peoples taken into exile. And all the Israelites were taken into exile. Don't let anyone tell you differently. You look it up in the encyclopedia, you might read that the 27,000 plus were taken away, according to an Assyrian inscription. But that is speaking only of the city of Samaria, Shomron. And that is also not so clear. It's not so clear if he's speaking only of those taken away for the purpose of the army, whereas the rest were also taken away for other purposes, or not. And we find that all the cities, all the settlements before the Assyrian, that existed before the Assyrian conquest, were destroyed, had been destroyed, they were burnt down on ashes. It was quite a while before anything was put up in their place. So this was a result of the Assyrian conquest, and this is proven by archaeological findings. And the majority of the Israelites were taken away in three different stages. They settled in areas of the Assyrian Empire, and there they were settled alongside groups in the Bible referred to as Gomer, and these descendants of Gomer in the Bible were Ashkenaz, Ripha, and Togarmah. And the Assyrians refer to them as Gomer or Germir or other permutations of the same name. And they were conquered by the Assyrians, served in the Assyrian armies, and later were contra-attempts fighting against Assyria. The beginning they had been found in the same areas where the Israelites were settled, and apparently the Israelites joined unto them, or were joined up to them in some way or other. The book of Hosea speaks of this. It speaks of this in allegorical terms. Hosea is told to take a loose woman to wife, an immoral woman, to take her and to have children from her, and he does. He has 3 children from her. And in continuation of the parak where it is explained expressly that these 3 children represent the 10 tribes, the 3 portions of the lost 10 tribes of Israel, of the northern kingdom, and it says especially that Judah is excluded from the equation. this identification of Gomer representing a unification with the 10 tribes of Israel through the prophet is confirmed from different sources, including one of them, the Base Israel, about to the 1970s, 1974, and he was a great rabbi, and he wrote a commentary on the Bible, and I met him, and I was impressed by him, and I acquired his books, and by divine providence I happened to read a passage that said expressly that the lost 10 tribes, especially Joseph, are Gomer, equating them with Gomer. So apparently that is what happened. The Israelites, the lost Israelites in their places of exile, they linked up with these other people, they combined with them, they became part of them, and also the history of a portion of them, of the Scythians, confirms them, a portion of them cooperated with Josiah, the king of Judah, who rebelled against the Assyrians, and a small colony of theirs was established at Brit-Am, which became their center, and they attempted a reunification with Judah, but it didn't work out. But it did something where it was put into process. The fact that it was put into process, and it's put into process with the Scythians, or that portion of the Scythians playing the role that other sources attribute to the lost 10 tribes of Israel, confirms the identification of a portion of the Scythians with these being from the lost tribes of Israel. And there are other proofs, numerous proofs, such as place names, ethnic names, different practices that they had that confirmed the identification that portion of the Israelites were with these peoples. And these Scythians, they moved together with the Cimmerians, of whom they were part. They moved in stages from the Black Sea area, from the Caucasus region, from the region south of the Caucasus in northern Syria, up through Turkey, up through all that area. They moved in stages to the north, and then they moved westward, also in stages. And at that time, and the region to the north of that was fertile and sustained a civilization of its own, which was quite populous, and due to climate changes and attacks from outside, they also eventually moved. All of them moved to the west and to the north in stages, reaching Western Europe. We find archaeological proof of these movements. We also find legends confirming it, and we see the further evidence in different names of different groups being in one place and moving to another. The same name is being found later further to the west. And they became the so-called Celtic peoples, or a portion of them. Also became the Angles and the Saxons and the Vikings of Scandinavia and other peoples that we identify with the lost 10 tribes of Israel, and we have proofs of this, and we have proofs from this from archaeology, as we said, different proofs from this from various sources, that when it all comes together, it all proves it. And these proofs are confirmed by the Bible. The Bible identifies descendants of these peoples with the lost tribes of Israel, and also so do Jewish traditions and biblical commentators that we rely upon, that are revered in Jewish traditions, that also say the same thing. For instance, Rashi says that the land of Salafat, that he says means France, was where the lost 10 tribes were to be found. Abarbanel, another great authority who lived much later, like was Rashi, lived in the early Middle Ages. Abarbanel lived in the 1400s, he said that not only is the fact the lost tribes to be found, but also in Anglia, but also in England. And the humanities says the lost 10 tribes were to be found at the edges of the far north. So taking all these proofs together, we get proofs that that is where the lost 10 tribes were to be. Being prophesied in advance that these peoples will be extremely numerous, as the stars of heaven as the sand of the sea. They would be extremely numerous. Eventually they would be very wealthy compared to other nations. They would possess much of the raw materials of the possess or control the valuable raw materials of the earth. They would rule the seas, and they would possess strategic points and thoroughfares that were vital to their potential enemies, and that is what they have done through America. Should also point out that concerning America, that America received a good number of people from Germany, so the migrations that we spoke about, they also included people from Germany, but from Germany was somewhat different from the other nations. The descendants of Israelites in Ireland and Britain and France and other places, the descendants of the Israelites were dominant elements. In Germany there were subservient elements, but separate from the mass of the population. And in the 1700s, as if they picked themselves up and they all went to America, 1700s and 1800s. And they'd always remained somewhat separate from the others, and this separation was observed by others who saw them for unperceived obvious reason. It wasn't so much the economic considerations, there were other points, more social adjustments, more a basic instinctive unease to be where they were, which caused them to pick themselves up and separate themselves out and move. And they were different from those who left behind, or a significant majority of them were different from those who left behind. So that too is worth noting. And these are not just ideas of ours, we base them on academic studies, observations from different sources that we bring together and show how they fit in with the biblical and related sources. Thank you, may the Lord God of Israel bless you.